Dragon Emperor Sun Chapter 541 to Chapter 550. As Qian Feng spoke, he saw his hands were clasped together, and he gently put it to his mouth and blew. A burst of harsh sounds came from Qian Feng's mouth. With the sound, the entire pool of water began to boil violently, and soon vortices appeared one after another, as if there were countless behemoths in the water. "Mr. Chen, be careful, he's going to push poison," the elder hurriedly reminded David. Looking at the pool of water under his feet, David's body jumped straight up. But just as David jumped up, countless poisonous insects over an inch long suddenly sprang out of the water, and the densely packed poisonous insects rushed out of the water and went straight to David. Tens of thousands of poisonous insects directly pressed the sky into the blackness, and David was shrouded in it, and there was no way to avoid it. Soon, those poisonous insects directly drowned David, and countless poisonous insects wrapped David's body and quickly fell from the air. Pfft! David fell directly into the pool of water, and soon disappeared. Slowly, the pool water returned to calm, and only occasionally some bubbles could be seen coming up. Seeing this scene, the four elders and Bai Zhantang were all shocked, and their faces turned pale. "Let's run!" Suddenly, the great elder shouted, turned around and ran. Without David, how could these people be Qian Feng's opponents, and there is only one dead end left? Bai Zhantang pulled Shen Mengchen up and turned around and ran. "Ha ha ha, you are too naive, no one can escape my palm." Qian Feng laughed loudly, but did not chase after him, as if he had already made plans. Seeing that Qian Feng didn't catch up, Bai Zhantang breathed a sigh of relief. But just after running away not far, I only heard a rustling sound, and then countless poisonous snakes crawled out from both sides of the canyon. All of them raised their heads, spit letters, and stopped in front of everyone. Seeing the poisonous snake that appeared, everyone was startled, and hurriedly stopped. No one dared to take a step. "Run, why didn't you run?" Qian Feng slowly came up from behind. "There are poisonous snakes in the front and soldiers in the back. The expressions of several people are extremely ugly, especially Shen Mengchen, she is a little girl. I have never seen such a scene, especially the fight between David and Qian Feng just now. In her eyes, she is just like a fairy fight in general. Gu Master, for the sake of our many years of working hard for you, I hope you can let us live." The first elder looked at Qian Feng and begged with a face. "Life." Qian Feng smiled coldly, "You have followed me for many years, don't you know how I deal with traitors?" As soon as Qian Feng's voice fell, the faces of the four elders instantly became extremely ugly and hideous. They dared not imagine what they would face in a while. "Brothers, everyone is dead, we might as well fight, and if it falls into his hands, it will definitely not end well." The great elder gritted his teeth and roared loudly. "Fight!" The other three elders all showed their weapons. Instead of sitting still, they might as well fight. If it really falls into Qian Feng's hands, it would be better to die. "Captain Su, take care of Miss Shen." Bai Zhantang handed Shen Mengchen over to Su Shimao, and also stepped forward. At this time, one more person will give more strength. Su Shimao was injured and could only barely protect Shen Mengchen. He also wanted to come forward, but he knew that his current body would not allow it. "Ha ha ha, just you stinky fish and rotten shrimp, want to fight with me?" Qian Feng laughed, his eyes full of contempt and disdain. "Kill!" The great elder shouted angrily, waved his weapon and rushed up. "Kill! Kill!" The remaining three elders and Bai Zhantang also swarmed up. Four great masters, one grand master, the combined power cannot be underestimated. Four sword beams shrouded Qian Feng, and Bai Zhantang took out a folding fan, pressed it lightly, and several beams shot out. At this time, everyone has come up with the ability to press the bottom of the box. It was originally a hidden weapon for Bai Zhantang to save his life, but he took it out immediately. "Humph!" Qian Feng snorted coldly, and with a wave of his hand, he even grabbed the 4 sword beams directly, and suddenly broke the swords in the hands of the 4 elders, and then waved them casually, and the 4 elders flew out. Qian Feng also waved his other hand, and all the hidden weapons shot by Bai Zhantang were taken down by Qian Feng. A mere hidden weapon, you want to hurt me too? Qian Feng snorted coldly, slapped it with a palm, and sent Bai Zhantang flying. The 4 elders and Bai Zhantang were not even a match for a single move, and they were seriously injured. After injuring the 4 elders and Bai Zhantang, Qian Feng did not take another shot, but looked at Shen Mengchen. Little junior sister is really beautiful, I don't know what master will do when he finds out that you are in my hands. Qian Feng walked towards Shen Mengchen with a grin on his face. Shen Mengchen was frightened and hid behind Su Shimao tightly. Su Shimao looked at Qian Feng with an ugly face and said, I am the captain of the Dharma Protector Pavilion in Kyoto. If you kill me, do you know what the consequences will be? Ha ha ha, are you threatening me? Let me tell you, I will be able to master the 5 poisons in no time. What if Zhao Waoqi comes? I'm afraid you won't be able to be a Dharma Protector. Qian Feng laughed, still walking towards Shen Mengchen. Seeing this, Su Shimao clenched his teeth, endured the pain, and swung a punch at Qian Feng. Qian Feng patted Su Shimao aside and watched Qian Feng catch Shen Mengchen. BA5 Tard, let me go, let me go. Shen Mengchen struggled desperately, but to no avail. Little junior sister, don't worry, I won't hurt you, as long as you are obedient. As Qian Feng said that, he stretched out his hand to tear off Shen Mengchen's clothes. He wants to take a few photos and send them to Shen Dianshan, so that Shen Dianshan can obey. But just when Qian Feng was about to rip off Shen Mengchen's clothes, he suddenly felt dizzy and let go of Shen Mengchen. Shen Mengchen was so frightened that he hurried to Bai Zhantang and looked at Qian Feng in horror. You don't need to be afraid, junior girl, he was shot by me, and he won't survive. Seeing Qian Feng like that, Bai Zhantang immediately said excitedly. It turned out that the hidden weapons that Bai Zhantang had just shot were just a cover. There was a poisonous needle as thin as a cow's hair. If you didn't identify it carefully, you would not be able to see it at all. The other hidden weapons were just a trick. This poisonous needle as thin as a cow's hair is Bai Zhantang's real killer move. When a few people heard it, they all looked surprised. Looking at Qian Feng's swaying appearance, they were all excited. Once Qian Feng died, they would be safe. Soon, Qian Feng sat on the ground, with his legs crossed, and looked at Bai Zhantang with gloomy eyes. You forget that I am the adopted son of the Miao village poison king, just a poison needle, how could it kill me? Wait for me forcing the poison out, it will definitely make your life worse than death. After Qian Feng finished speaking, he took out a porcelain bottle from his body. After opening it, there was a worm the size of a fingernail and green body. Without any hesitation, he swallowed the worm in one bite. This is a drug addict, and soon the poison in my body will be absorbed by it. Qian Feng closed his eyes slightly and sat motionless. Now is the best time to take action against Qian Feng, but several people are all injured, and they have no ability to attack, and Shen Mengchen, an ordinary girl, is even more unlikely to hurt that Qian Feng. Now that the poisonous snake is blocking the road, they can't escape, they can only watch that Qian Feng slowly remove the poison. At the same time, in the cold pool, David sat at the bottom of the cold pool, motionless like an old monk entering meditation. Countless poisonous insects bit David's body and scrambled to inject the venom from his body into David. In the body. Soon, David already had a large amount of venom in his body, but David used the heart concentration technique to absorb the venom and convert it into spiritual power to store on his danshan. The poisonous insect that bit David was quickly sucked up by David, and then slowly floated to the surface of the water like a mummified corpse. 1, 2. Soon, there were fewer and fewer poisonous insects biting David, and more poisonous insects were floating on the water, and the whole water surface was densely covered. The spiritual power in David's body was growing rapidly, and bursts of bubbles came out of David's body, and it was like a pot on the water. Hum! The surface of the water suddenly swayed, and David under the water opened his eyes. At this time, he had reached the peak of foundation building. These poisonous insects and the cold air in the cold pool made David completely absorbed into his body. If someone touches the pool water at this time, they will find that the originally cold pool water is not cold at all, and there is still a trace of warmth. At the same time, Qianfeng, who was using the drug addict to absorb toxins, also opened his eyes and opened his mouth suddenly. The insect rushed out and drilled back into the small porcelain bottle. Weak, too weak, just such a poisonous needle wants my life? What a joke! Qianfeng looked at Bai Zhantang and the others with a ferocious expression. Seeing that Qianfeng was all right, the hearts of several people suddenly became ashes, and there was no hope in their eyes. Aren't you on your knees and begging me? Maybe I'll be merciful and let you go. Qianfeng glanced at everyone and asked. But no one begged for mercy, because they already knew that this Qianfeng would not let them go, he was just humiliating them. Seeing that no one was begging for mercy, Qianfeng was a little angry, and his eyes were cold. Since no one is begging for mercy, then I will let you taste the taste of poisoning, but my poison will not make you die immediately, it will make you suffer. 19 hours later, my body festered and died. Qianfeng said, took out a sachet-like thing, and after opening it, he took out a handful of powdered objects, ready to throw them on a few people. This time, everyone was terrified. Shen Mengchen cried out in fright, and the expressions of the others were also very ugly. Just when everyone felt that they were certain to die, suddenly there was a rush of water in the cold pool. Immediately afterwards, a huge water column rose into the sky, and there was a person sitting cross-legged above the water column. Mr. Chen, it's Mr. Chen. Bai Zhantang saw that the person sitting above the water column turned out to be David. At this moment, David's eyes burst into two cold beams, which directly caused Qianfeng to tremble. Qianfeng turned his head, and when he saw that David was really rushing out from the bottom of the pool, he was dumbfounded. Others were excited when they saw that David was still alive. Impossible, it's impossible, so many poisons, how can it not kill you? Qianfeng couldn't believe his eyes. With so many poisons, let alone a single person, even a group of elephants could be poisoned to death. How could David be fine? Speaking of which, I have to thank you for your poison. David's body floated down, and he smiled coldly at Qianfeng. Qianfeng looked around, only to find that on the entire water surface, all the poisonous insects were dead, floating on it, a piece of blackness. Ah! I want to kill you, this is what I have cultivated for many years. Seeing that his beloved poison was dead, Qianfeng completely lost his mind and smashed David with a punch. David snorted coldly, his body disappeared from sight, and then before Qianfeng could react, he punched Qianfeng in the chest. Qianfeng didn't have time to react at all, the whole person was thrown up just like a kite with a broken string. David jumped and walked towards Qianfeng in midair, followed by another punch. Every time he punched Qianfeng's body would rise a certain distance, until David's body fell down when he was more than 20 meters away from the ground. And Qianfeng's body fell at the speed of free fall, directly smashing a big hole on the ground, and the mask on his face fell in two halves. Under the mask, there is an extremely ferocious, very terrifying face, like a ghost, that scared Shen Mengchen to scream. Qianfeng spurted blood from his mouth and wanted to get up, but he couldn't get up at all. He looked at David in horror, his eyes were full of incredulity. He found that David's strength had suddenly increased a lot, which made him even have the strength to fight back. Nothing. Is this your best strength? David looked down at Qianfeng and said. David, you can't kill me, otherwise my adoptive father can't let you go. If you let me go, I can hand over Swanya Valley, and I can give you everything in Suanya Valley. Qian Feng gritted his teeth and said. You are really shameless. This Suanya Valley is not yours. What if you hand it over? Besides, I killed you, isn't Suanya Valley still mine? David sneered. Qian Feng was stunned for a moment, and his terrifying face became even more hideous. If you kill me, you are an enemy of the entire Miao village. What about being an enemy of Miao village? I hope they can come to me for revenge. In that case, I will have a reason to get all the poisons of Miao village. Thinking that those poisons can also increase his own cultivation, David wished that the people from Miao village would come earlier. Qian Feng was so angry that he vomited blood again and again, and he couldn't say a word. David stepped on it with one foot, directly crushing Qian Feng's head. Seeing David kill Qian Feng so easily, Bai Zhantang and the others were all shocked. How many of you can't die? David glanced at Bai Zhantang and they asked. Several people all shook their heads. Although they were all injured, they were not fatal. That's good, follow me in and see, what's good. David jumped onto a small boat, and several others helped them get up and got on the boat. Looking at the corpses of poisonous substances on the surface of the water, several people's scalps go numb. Soon the boat reached the other side, and the others in Suanya Valley had already fallen to their knees, waiting for their fate. They watched David kill Qian Feng with their own eyes. Who would dare to resist, and the reason why they obeyed Qian Feng's words? It's just being controlled by goo worms, so it's not enough. Mr. Chen, I also hope that you can bypass them. These are also old subordinates of Lord Shen Gu, but they were controlled by that Qian Feng with goo insects. It was a last resort. The first elder pleaded with David. David glanced at the people in Suanya Valley, suddenly stretched out his hand and waved, and a faint red light instantly enveloped them. Soon, all these people's expressions became painful, and then they grabbed their throats hideously. Mr. Chen. The first elder thought that David was going to kill him. But before the words were finished, I saw these people retching one by one, and then all the goo worms were spit out, and then ran away. When the first elder saw this, he realized that David was just getting rid of goo worms for these people in Suanya Valley. Thank you, Mr. Chen. Those people in Suanya Valley all followed David to thank him. David nodded, then walked to the hall of Suanya Valley base camp, saw the pottery pot on the table, the corner of David's mouth was slightly raised, and he walked over and stretched his hand in. The goo worms were biting at David's hand, but they all died soon. What kind of medicinal herbs are there in this Suanya Valley? David asked the great elder. Yes, we still have some Zhuyuan Dan and some medicinal materials in Suanya Valley, but most of them were transported away by Qian Feng, and it is estimated that they were transported to Miao village. The elder said. Tie these things together, and no one is allowed to move, I'm useful. David said to the great elder. The first elder nodded again and again, but did not dare to ask more. Now what David said, they did what they did. When David brought Bai Zhantang and Shen Mengchen back to Shen's house, it was already dark, and Su Shimao dragged his severely injured body back to Kyoto by car. This trip to the southwest touched Su Shimao deeply. Your temperament will change. Dad, you said you have something to hide from me. As soon as he got home, Shen Mengchen yelled at Shen Dianshan. Seeing Shen Mengchen asking herself this way, Shen Dianshan knew that she already knew about Suanyuegu, so she could only sigh and say, Daughter, I will explain it to you after the matter is over. I have a little chat with Mr. Chen in advance. David winked at Bai Zhantang, who hurriedly dragged Shen Mengchen away. Mr. Chen, did Qian Feng kill him? Shen Dianshan asked. Already dead, the four elders and some people in Suanya Valley, I have removed the goo worms from their bodies and returned to freedom. If you still want to be the owner of Suanya Valley, you can still issue orders. David said lightly. Me? Shen Dianshan smiled bitterly, I can live for 5 days at most, what kind of valley owner should I be, but my daughter, what will she do after I die? I know that Mr. Chen has a strong peach blossom luck, but he still has no wife. I don't know my daughter, she. David quickly reached out his hand to stop Shen Dianshan from continuing. I already have a girlfriend, and you can tell who your daughter likes. Shen Dianshan sighed helplessly, they won't come together after all. Shen Dianshan shook his head, and then continued, Mr. Chen, I hope you can stay for a few more days, I want to give Swanya Valley to my daughter, I hope you can help her. No problem, I can let Bai Zhantang stay a little longer. In addition to helping Miss Shen, the two of them can also increase their relationship. David laughed. Shen Dianshan smiled and said nothing. The next day, David and Bai Zhantang accompanied Shen Dianshan and Shen Mengchen to Swanya Valley. Shen Dianshan is very excited to return to the place he built after a few years. David used the medicinal herbs and medicinal materials of Swanya Valley to start his cultivation. He has now reached the peak of foundation building, and he can almost break through to the realm of Anidia. Shen Dianshan is teaching Shen Mengchen, and Bai Zhantang is also helping out. 5 days later, Shen Dianshan really passed away. Shen Mengchen begged David bitterly and wanted David to save Shen Dianshan. In Shen Mengchen's eyes, David was an immortal. But David is not an immortal yet. Even if he is an immortal, it is difficult to have the ability to change his life against the sky. Shen Dianshan's life has been exhausted, and David cannot save him. After Shen Dianshan was buried, David asked Bai Zhantang to stay for some time to help Shen Mengchen and comfort her. After all, he just lost his father, and he himself got on the plane to Horindal. The plane ticket is the first-class cabin booked by Bai Zhantang, and David is the first time to do the first-class cabin on the plane. After finding his place with the ticket, David sat on the comfortable seat, closed his eyes slightly, and waited for the plane to take off. At this time, 2 young people walked in first class, 1 man and 1 woman dressed in fashion. The woman had a melon face and a pair of sunglasses. After looking at their ticket, they sat next to David. The boy's position was in front of David. After the girl sat down, she glanced at David, frowned slightly, and showed disgust in her eyes. The girl looked at the boy who came with her and said, Brother Liang, I don't want to be next to this person. At first glance, he looks like a douchebag, and his body stinks to death. The boy hurriedly winked at the girl, you have to be patient, and when the plane takes off, I'm switching places with him. Boys don't want to cause trouble, after all, people who can afford first-class seats are definitely not ordinary. The girl pouted and looked unhappy, that's fine, but you have to check it quickly to see if there are still tickets for Song Tai's concert, I don't want to go there for nothing. Okay, my dad has a friend in Horindal. He is very good. He seems to be called Lin Tianhu. I heard that when he stomped his foot in Horindal, the whole Horindal trembled. The boy hurriedly boasted. Then contact him quickly and give us 2 tickets for the front row. I like Song Tai the most, but I just don't understand why this concert is held in such a small city as Horindal. The girl looked puzzled. Okay, I'll contact you first, you sit and wait, the boy nodded. David kept listening with his eyes closed. When he heard that Song Tai went to Horindal for a concert, David suddenly felt that this matter might have something to do with him. No way, Song Tai knew that he was from Horindal, so he went to Horindal to hold a concert, right? David frowned slightly. If this is the case, then Song Tai will definitely find himself. How can he explain to Sonia then? Now there is a Gulinger who stimulates him from time to time, and David can't stand it anymore. If Song Tai comes again, David feels that he is going to collapse. Boy. Just when David was thinking about it, a middle-aged woman suddenly patted David on the shoulder. David hurriedly opened his eyes and said, Auntie, is something wrong? Oh, I'm just asking you, I heard that this time the first-class ticket is 20% off, is yours discounted? The middle-aged woman asked politely. Auntie, I'm sorry, I don't know, this ticket was bought for me by a friend, and it's my first time to take it. David said quickly. Oh. The middle-aged woman didn't say anything else and sat back in her seat. When the young boy heard that David's air ticket was bought by a friend, David took a plane for the first time, and his eyes flashed with disdain, and his arrogant attitude appeared instantly. Dude, take a seat, you go and sit in front, I'm going to be next to my girlfriend. The boy said to David with a proud face. David just glanced at the boy, ignored him, and lay down on the seat with his eyes closed. Seeing David ignoring himself, the boy immediately became angry. Dude, didn't you hear what I said? I told you to move your seat away, don't make me unhappy. David still ignored him and didn't even look at the boy. Damn, the boy cursed, reached out and grabbed David's collar, but before his hand touched David, David suddenly opened his eyes and grabbed the boy's wrist. David's hand was like a pair of pliers, and it stuck tightly to the boy's wrist. The huge force made the boy sweat and cry loudly. It hurts, let go of me. The boy wailed, and the girl saw this and immediately yelled at David, you hillbilly, let go of Brother Liang quickly. David turned his head to look at the girl. Ling Lai's eyes were so frightened that the girl closed her mouth instantly. But David didn't exert any force, but let go of his hand, otherwise the boy's hand would be useless. Seeing this, the girl hurriedly got up and helped the boy rub his wrist. Boy, you have a kind, wait until Horrendal has you good looking. The boy gritted his teeth and threatened David, and he didn't dare to force David to change his seat. Brother Liang, are you okay? The girl asked with concern. It's okay, I didn't expect this country bumpkin to be quite strong. After getting off the plane, I will definitely let you taste my power. The boy said angrily. Soon, the plane took off, and more than 3 hours later, the plane landed steadily at Horrendal Airport. David also had no luggage, got up and got off the plane, while the young couple closely followed behind David, for fear of losing David. I've already sent a message to Lin Tianhu, today I have to interrupt this kid's leg. The boy looked at David's back, gritted his teeth and said. How about the tickets? The girl asked hurriedly. No problem, within the first 20 rows. The boy said proudly. Brother Liang, you are amazing, I love you to death. The girl kissed the boy on the cheek. Walking out of the airport, Lin Tianhu was waiting for David at the exit. David had already informed Lin Tianhu before departure. Mr. Chen. Seeing David coming out, Lin Tianhu hurriedly greeted him. David glanced at Lin Tianhu and nodded slightly. Yes, the strength has increased a lot in the past few days. Lin Tianhu smiled, it all depends on Mr. Chen's guidance. Let's go. David said and was about to get in the car. Lin Tianhu's face was embarrassed for a while, David was stunned, and then he immediately remembered something, and then asked Lin Tianhu, are you still waiting for someone else? Mr. Chen, to tell you the truth, I have an old friend who I haven't seen for many years. His son came to Horrendal to watch the concert, and he asked me to take care of it. Lin Tianhu said helplessly. David remembered the pair of men and women he met on the plane, and also remembered that the boy mentioned Lin Tianhu's name, so he nodded and said, if that's the case, then wait. At this time, the pair of men and women also walked out of the airport. The two of them walked in a hurry, as if they were chasing someone. Brother Liang, why did that guy disappear in the blink of an eye? The girl said a little unhappily. Don't worry, he can't run away, as long as he is in Horrendal, I can find him. The boy took out his mobile phone, looked at a photo above, and looked for it at the exit of the airport. It was Lin Tianhu in the photo. Soon, the boy found Lin Tianhu's location and hurriedly pulled the girl and ran over. Uncle Lin, I'm Zhang Liang. After the boy walked in front of Lin Tianhu, he hurriedly introduced himself. He hadn't found David who was already in the car, but the girl saw it at a glance. At this time, the car window was open, and half of David's face was exposed. "Brother Liang, it's him, he's here," the girl excitedly said to Zhang Liang. Zhang Liang looked in the direction of the girl's finger, and saw David sitting in the car, and immediately stared. "Uncle Lin, this guy just bullied me on the plane, look at my wrists are still red now." Zhang Liang hurriedly showed Lin Tianhu his red wrist. "Boy, aren't you very arrogant? You will look good in a while." The girl also sneered at David. David ignored them, but looked at Lin Tianhu and said, "This is the person you're waiting for." Cold sweat broke out on Lin Tianhu's forehead, and he gave Zhang Liang a slap in the face. "What the H3LL are you talking about? Can you point out Mr. Chen?" A slap slapped that Zhang Liang into a circle, looking at Lin Tianhu with an incredible look, while Lin Tianhu said to David, "Mr. Chen, I really don't know that this guy offended you, my father and I are just nodding. I'll send someone to throw the two of them into the river now." Lin Tianhu's words made both of them go crazy, and the girl started to cry. "Forget it, let them go back to where they came from." David waved his hand and raised the car window. "You two are lucky today, hurry up and buy a plane ticket and go back." After Lin Tianhu finished speaking, he got into the car and drove away. Only this pair of young men and women were left standing at the exit of the airport, watching the vehicle go further and further like a fool. Pine Mountain Peak Villa. Sonia was busy in the kitchen, and the whole kitchen was smoky. "I told you not to be busy." The whole room smelled of oil smoke. "It's only been a few days since we were separated. Come back when you come back." Gulinger covered her nose and persuaded Sonia. "That's not good. I must learn to cook and be a good wife and mother, or else David will be taken away, and I have begun to feel a sense of crisis." Sonia didn't listen to the advice and was still busy in the kitchen. Hearing Sonia's words, Gulinger didn't know why, her face flushed slightly. "I won't rob your David." "Oh, I didn't say you, if you like him, why don't you use force? It's enough for the two of us to be together. Don't kill David by then." Sonia is joking with Gulinger. Gulinger's heart skipped a beat. She couldn't understand why Sonia's heart beat faster every time she said this. She even had this idea. "Gulinger, what are you thinking about?" Gulinger hurriedly yelled at herself in her heart, calming her mind, and regardless of Sonia, she went to the sofa to watch TV by herself. Soon, Sonia sat down on a table of dishes. Although they were not complete in color and fragrance, they were cooked. Just after Sonia was done, Lin Tianhu came back with David. As soon as he entered the door and looked at the smoky living room, David didn't have to guess what was going on. "David, you're back, watch the food I cook for you." Seeing David coming back, Sonia said with a sense of accomplishment. "Well, it's so fragrant. I'm hungry when I smell this fragrance." David took a deep breath and said intoxicated. "Really? Then sit down quickly." Sonia hurriedly asked David to sit down, and then said to Gulinger and Lin Tianhu, "Come over and eat together." "No no no," Lin Tianhu was so frightened that he hurriedly waved his hand, "Chifeng has already cooked, wait for me to go back to eat." When David heard it, his face was playful. "Lin Tianhu, you can do it, we live with Chifeng." Lin Tianhu's face turned red. "We are all so old, we are almost done. I think the two of you should just live together, and you have established a relationship, so what are you pretending to do?" Gulinger said to David and Sonia. "That's not good, I'm going to save the most precious thing for the wedding night." Sonia hurriedly shook her head. "You keep it, I'm afraid some girls won't keep it, and you will regret it." Gulinger gave a wicked smile. Sonia was stunned, then looked at David, who glared at Gulinger and smiled at Sonia. "Don't worry, I'm not that kind of person. Forgive you, don't dare." Sonia smiled proudly. After Lin Tianhu left, Gulinger wanted to leave too. She really couldn't eat the food Sonia made, but just after walking 2 steps, she was dragged back by Sonia. She had to taste the food she made. Gulinger could only sit down helplessly. David ate very happily, and praised Sonia's good craftsmanship while eating, which made Sonia elated. Seeing Sonia looking at her, Gulinger could only barely pick up the chopsticks and eat a little bit. Halfway through the meal, David's cell phone rang, stood up and David connected the call. "Brother, are you in Horrendal?" As soon as the call was connected, Chen Yingxia's voice came over. "Yes, what's wrong with Yingxia?" David was a little nervous, he thought that Chen Yingxia encountered some difficulties. "Brother, Song Tai will hold a concert in Horrendal in 5 days. I think you are very capable. Can you find a way to get some tickets?" Chen Yingxia asked in a low voice. "Okay, no problem." David agreed immediately. Seeing David agree, Chen Yingxia happily hung up the phone, but after agreeing, David felt a little helpless. Originally, he didn't want to have anything to do with Song Tai. David is also a normal man, so Song Tai doesn't matter his appearance. It's still her appearance, she's a first-class beauty. David is really afraid that he will make mistakes if he has too much contact with Song Tai. But now I have no choice but to contact Song Tai and ask for a few tickets. David put the phone on and sat back at the dining table. "Whose phone number?" Sonia asked curiously. "Yingxia, she wants to see the concert, let me get her some tickets." David said lightly. "Do you have a way to get it? This ticket has always been difficult to get, and now I can't buy it at a higher price, and I haven't bought it either." Gulinger hurriedly asked David when he heard it. David nodded, "Can. Then you have to get me one too." Gulinger believed David's words. With David's strength, it shouldn't be difficult to get a few tickets. "Okay," David said without hesitation. "I'm so envious. I'm so happy to find a capable boyfriend. Everything can be solved." Gulinger looked at Sonia enviously. "This envy is not fake, it's real envy. If you are envious, let me give you half of it," Sonia said with a bad smile. Gulinger blushed and stopped talking. Just when a few people were about to finish their meal, the doorbell rang suddenly. "Who will come?" Sonia was a little puzzled, knowing that few people came here. "I went to see." David got up and checked. When I opened the door, I saw a beautiful girl standing outside. Although she was wearing a large sunshade mirror, David knew at a glance that this girl was Song Tai. "You really live here?" When Song Tai saw David, his face burst into a smile. "You, how did you find this place?" David was startled and secretly looked back at Sonia. If two people met, he didn't know how to explain it, especially when Song Tai looked at him with deep love. If Sonia saw this, David couldn't even imagine what the consequences would be. "It's not easy. Didn't you give my dad the address? I brought you stones." Song Tai pointed to a van truck not far away. "There are all the stones you want in it. I'll bring you stones, won't you invite me in to sit? Put the stone down, you can go back, it's not very convenient now, I'll be in touch with you later, I just happen to be looking for you." David said a little anxiously. "What's the matter? Is it about the concert?" Song Tai smiled slightly. But before David spoke, Sonia from the restaurant shouted loudly, "David, who is it?" "Oh, the delivery," David said hurriedly. "Is Jinwu Zhang Jiao? Who is it?" Song Tai immediately became interested when he heard the voice of a girl. "My girlfriend, it's not what you think." David could only helplessly explain. "Then I want to see what your girlfriend looks like. It's really enviable to have a capable boyfriend like you," Song Tai said, but he broke into the house directly. David wanted to stop him, but he couldn't. He couldn't take Song Tai away, right? Song Tai rushed into the house. Sonia was eating with Gulinger, and both of them were stunned when they saw Song Tai who suddenly came in. Song Tai was also stunned. She didn't think there were two girls, and they were both very beautiful. She didn't know which one was David's girlfriend. Are you Song Tai? After being stunned for a while, Gulinger suddenly screamed. When Sonia heard it, she was also a little excited. No wonder she just looked familiar, it turned out to be a big star. Hello. Song Tai smiled slightly. Hello, hello, please sit down. Gulinger hurriedly greeted Song Tai to sit down, pouring tea and water. At this time, David also followed, facing Song Tai. Deo, this is my girlfriend Sonia. Song Tai looked at Sonia, and then smiled lightly. Miss Su is really beautiful, no wonder she can fascinate Mr. Chen. Song Tai stretched out his hand and shook it with Sonia. Sonia was a little confused at this time, and asked Song Tai, Miss Song knows my boyfriend. She had never heard David mention that she knew a big star like Song Tai. Yes, Mr. Chen lived in my house for a while. Song Tai said. Have you lived in your house? Sonia looked at David in shock. Gulinger was also stunned at this time, and looked at David in disbelief. Don't get me wrong, she said that she lives in his house, she simply lives in his house, and there is nothing. David hurriedly explained. But he felt that the more he explained, the darker he became, and in the end he could only helplessly look to Song Tai for help. Song Tai smiled, Miss Su, don't get me wrong, Mr. Chen simply lives in my house, because our family is in the ore business, and Mr. Chen needs a batch of ore, so he lives in my house and talks about cooperation. I'm here to send ore to Mr. Chen. We are now in a cooperative relationship. After Song Tai's explanation, Sonia understood it instantly, and she also remembered the matter of David following Wudong to Hungshan some time ago. Miss Song is too worried, how could I have misunderstood, sit down quickly. Sonia smiled and greeted Song Tai to sit down. You guys talk, I'll arrange for someone to unload the ore. David made an excuse to slip away, otherwise he really doesn't know what to say here. David directed the unloading of the spirit stones into the courtyard of the villa. This thing is priceless to David, but for ordinary people or warriors, it is nothing but broken stones. After putting the Lingxi away, David walked back to the house and found that the three girls, Sonia, Gulinger, and Song Tai, were laughing. The spirit stone is finished. You can leave if you have nothing to do. Don't you have a concert in a few days? Can you give me a few tickets? David said to Song Tai. Of course. Song Tai got up and smiled at David, I'll give you a few pictures from the front row, so you can see me clearly. When Song Tai said this, his eyes turned towards David lightly, so scared that David hurriedly moved his eyes away.